The football team laughed because a girl showed up to tryouts. They didn't know I could smoke them all in my sleep. I showed up ready to compete for quarterback, and the entire team stared at me like I'd walked onto the field naked. The coach asked if I was lost because cheerleading tryouts were in the gym. When I said I was here for football, he actually laughed and said, "Sweetheart, this is full contact, not powder puff. You're gonna get hurt." I told him I'd played varsity at my previous school, and he rolled his eyes saying playing catch with your boyfriend didn't count as football experience, which was ridiculous considering this team hadn't won a game in 2 years and desperately needed actual talent. The quarterback, Graham, who couldn't have been more than 5 feet 8 inches and maybe 140 pounds soaking wet, strutted over and announced that having a girl on the field would be distracting for the real players. His backup, Zeke, added that football required actual strength, not just looking cute in yoga pants, and asked if I even knew what a down was, or if I thought it meant something I do on my knees. The whole team cracked up even though half of them looked like they'd struggled to bench press the bar, and they'd gone 0 to 10 last season. Coach had me line up to run drills but kept explaining every single one like I was 5 years old, demonstrating how to hold a football while the team snickered, not knowing I'd been throwing perfect spirals since I was 7 because my 5 brothers used me for target practice in the backyard. Graham said they should put pillows on me so nobody accidentally hurt the princess, which was rich coming from a guy whose highlight reel was fumbles and interceptions. They made me go last in every drill, and when I lined up to throw, Coach told me to stand closer because girls' arms weren't built for distance. Graham grabbed the ball from me first and showed me the proper grip, mansplaining about laces and release points like I hadn't thrown for 3,800 yards last season. When I finally got to throw, Zeke stood right behind me and put his hands on my hips to fix my stance, and whispered that I should stick to sports where I could wear something tighter. During tackling drills, Coach said I could skip them since obviously I'd never taken a real hit before. But when I insisted, he made this big show of getting the smallest guy on the team, Joey, who was maybe 5 feet 4 inches, to demonstrate. Joey didn't just pretend to tackle me gently, he actually grabbed my face mask and yanked my head sideways saying, "Oops, girls' necks must be weaker," and Coach just laughed saying that's why women shouldn't play. The team started chanting Powder Puff Princess, while I tried to straighten my helmet. The offensive line, none of whom could have been over 200 pounds, started discussing what would happen when I got my period during a game. Carl, the center, said I'd probably cry about cramps and need to be carried off, and Greg, the tackle, asked if they'd have to stop the game every month for my woman problems. They kept asking increasingly invasive questions about how I'd handle a cup or if I even wore one, with Graham finally saying he'd volunteer to check if everyone really wanted to know. Then things got physical when Graham decided to show me a real hit during what was supposed to be a non-contact walkthrough. He drove his shoulder into my ribs when I wasn't looking, knocking me flat and knocking the wind out of me, then stood over me saying, "That's what happens every play, princess. Still want to be a football player?" While I gasped for air, Zeke poured his water bottle on my face, saying I looked like I needed cooling off. Coach pulled me aside while I was still catching my breath and said I was being selfish, trying to prove something that would get someone killed. He grabbed my face mask and shook it, saying my neck would snap like a twig, that his players averaged 180 pounds, and would destroy me without trying. When I didn't quit right then, he made me sign a paper saying my family wouldn't sue when I got paralyzed, writing "when not if" in huge letters while the team watched. The team started a scrimmage and made me participate, but told me I was playing permanent victim, meaning I'd take every hit from every drill. They weren't blocking for me at all, just letting defender after defender take free shots, and after the 5th hit where Greg deliberately stepped on my hand with his cleats, Graham announced they should practice accidental injuries that happen when girls don't know their place. Carl snapped the ball directly at my face twice, claiming his hands were too sweaty. Finally, Coach said I had one chance to throw a pass to prove I belonged, or I had to leave forever. The whole team lined up to watch me fail, with Graham saying, "Try not to throw like a girl," as he tossed me the ball, and I was about to unleash the same 60-yard bomb that won us state finals, when I heard a voice behind me say, "Still underthrowing your deep roots, Chloe?" My blood went ice cold as I turned around and saw Haley walking onto the field in full gear carrying her helmet, here to try out just like me. She was the only quarterback in our league who'd outplayed me, who'd beaten me for league MVP by 1 vote. Suddenly I realized that after taking all this abuse from guys who couldn't even play, I was about to get shown up by the one person here who could actually destroy me, and she was another girl. My legs felt like concrete as Haley walked right past me toward the coach, her shoulders back and her chin up like she owned the place. She dropped her gear bag next to mine and told Coach she was here for quarterback tryouts, making the whole team go dead quiet. Every guy on the field stared at us like we were some kind of circus act that just rolled into town. Coach's face went from confused to annoyed as he looked between us, shaking his head like this had to be someone's idea of a joke. He announced real loud that we'd both get exactly 1 throw to prove ourselves. Then we were done wasting his time. The team immediately started placing bets on which girl would embarrass herself worse, with Graham putting $20 on me crying first. Zeke doubled down, saying we'd both throw it straight into the ground like typical girls. Coach pointed at Haley and told her to go first since she showed up late and interrupted everything. She picked up the ball and rolled it in her hands, getting a feel for the laces while walking to the throwing position. Without any warm-up or hesitation, she dropped back 3 steps and launched the ball in a perfect spiral. The ball sailed through the air for what had to be 60 yards before dropping right into the receiver's hands. The laughter on the field died instantly, as every single player watched that ball fly farther than most of them could dream of throwing. Even Coach's mouth hung open for a second before he caught himself and closed it. My ribs were screaming from Graham's cheap shot earlier, but I grabbed the ball when Coach tossed it to me. I tried to breathe deep, but the pain made me wince as I set up for my throw. Despite feeling like my whole side was on fire, I planted my back foot and unleashed everything I had. The ball shot out of my hand like a bullet, hitting the same distance as Haley's but with way more velocity. Graham's face turned bright red as both girls just outthrew him by at least 20 yards. Coach blew his whistle and declared tryouts over for the day, telling us to come back tomorrow if we were actually serious about this. The team started walking off the field, but I caught several guys looking back at us with worried expressions. Carl whispered something to Greg about their positions not being safe anymore if girls could throw like that. Haley and I grabbed our gear and walked off the field together, neither of us saying anything at first. The parking lot was mostly empty by the time we reached our cars, the awkward silence getting thicker with each step. She finally broke the quiet by saying she heard what they did to me before she got there. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video someone had posted to the team group chat. The video showed Graham's hit on me crystal clear, him driving his shoulder into my ribs when I wasn't even looking. Someone had captioned it, "Princess gets rocked," with a bunch of laughing emojis underneath. My stomach turned seeing myself get knocked flat like that, seeing how deliberate and dirty the hit really was. That evening my ribs hurt so bad I couldn't even lie down without wanting to scream. I drove myself to the urgent care clinic near my house, barely able to turn the steering wheel without pain shooting through my side. The doctor had me lift my shirt and whistled low when she saw the bruising spreading across my ribs. She pressed gently on different spots, documenting each wince and marking the extent of the damage on a chart. The x-rays showed no breaks, but the soft tissue damage was extensive, according to what she wrote in my file. The nurse came in while I was getting dressed and asked if I wanted to file a police report for assault. I told her I needed to think about it, but she gave me all the paperwork just in case. She also printed out copies of my medical records and the photos they took of my injuries. My phone buzzed around 10 that night with a text from Haley asking if I was okay. She said she'd been thinking about what happened and suggested we work together instead of letting them pit us against each other. She'd already started drafting an incident report about everything she witnessed and recorded at practice. She sent me a draft that detailed Graham's assault, the coach's negligence, and the hostile environment they created. Her old school had gone through something similar, and she knew exactly how to document everything properly. She said the key was having evidence and witnesses, which we now had thanks to that video. The next morning, we met at a coffee shop near school an hour before practice was supposed to start. Haley had printed out complaint forms and brought a folder with everything organized by date and incident. She walked me through the process of filing with the athletic director, explaining what would trigger an actual investigation. We filled out the forms together, making sure to include every single detail from yesterday's practice. I attached my medical documentation from urgent care, showing the extent of my injuries from the assault. Haley added screenshots from the group chat, including the video and all the comments the players made about it. We walked into the athletic director's office right when it opened and handed over our complaint package. The assistant's eyes went wide as she flipped through the medical photos and saw the video evidence on Haley's phone. She immediately said this was being taken very seriously and scheduled us for a formal meeting that afternoon. We had to go to practice that afternoon even though my ribs were killing me with every breath I took. Coach acted like nothing had happened, blowing his whistle and telling everyone to line up for warm-ups like he hadn't watched Graham assault me yesterday. He made Haley and me run extra laps around the field while the guys did their regular stretches and drills, saying we needed to build up our endurance if we wanted to keep up with the boys. My side was on fire by the third lap, and I kept pressing my hand against my ribs trying to hold them together. The trainer noticed me struggling and jogged over, pulling me aside near the water coolers while practice continued. She had me lift my jersey and her eyes went wide when she saw the purple and black bruising spreading across my entire left side. She pressed different spots with her fingers, asking if each one hurt, and wrote down every wince and gasp I made on her clipboard. She took photos with her phone from different angles, documenting the clear shoulder-shaped impact mark on my ribs. She said this was definitely from a deliberate hit during what was supposed to be non-contact drills yesterday. She wrote up an official injury report right there on the sideline, stating that the bruising pattern was consistent with an illegal tackle during a walkthrough drill. She told me she was required by state law to report this as a safety violation, regardless of what complaint we'd already filed with the AD. The meeting with the athletic director came right after practice ended. Haley and I sat across from her desk while she reviewed everything we'd submitted that morning, plus the trainer's new report that had just been added to our file. The AD's face got more serious with each page she turned, especially when she got to the medical photos showing my injuries. She picked up her phone and called someone, telling them to come to her office immediately. 5 minutes later, the assistant coach walked in looking confused until the AD showed him the video of Graham's hit on her computer. She told him he'd be taking over practices effective immediately because she was placing Coach on administrative leave pending a full investigation into these safety violations. Word spread through the team faster than wildfire. By that evening, my phone was blowing up with notifications from the team group chat where guys were losing their minds about Coach getting suspended. Graham posted that we'd ruined their season before it even started. Zeke said we were attention seekers who couldn't handle real football. Carl wrote that this was what happened when girls tried to play a man's sport. Someone tagged the school newspaper's Instagram account in the chat, and within an hour, a student reporter was messaging me asking for a statement about what happened. The next morning, the assistant coach ran practice completely differently than Coach ever had. He actually let us participate in the regular quarterback drills instead of making us run laps the whole time. Most of the guys wouldn't even look at us, stepping away whenever we got near them like we had some contagious disease. Graham kept